Mr. Weedman and Big Earl. What's up, all you gardeners out there in the world of growing weed? How's everybody doing out there? Big Earl, what's going on, my brother? How's it going?
It's going well, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Just as always, excited to be doing this show with you. Excited to get baked. I'm super excited. Do you want to know why I'm super excited? I'm so super excited about this because I'm smoking an oldie but a goodie. I am smoking the first strain of that I ever got from you, meaning the beans that you sent me. I told you I have like 4 headies left of the Mr. Weedman or the Weedman 420 Chronicles experimental strain. I've always called it, but you've called it Louis. What was it? Louis Trey or Louis 5 or Louis 4?
Lemon Louis the Great.
Yes, that one. So because you didn't have a name for it when you sent it to me.
No.
So
a long accidentally got knocked up in a tent, and then we popped the seeds at my shop, and then we crossed that, and it was but it had some lemon hash plant in there, and I knew I wanted it to be royalty. So
it is. I mean, I still have 6 beans left. Now, you sent me 10, and I planted 4, and 3 were female, which were great, and it was my second grow, and I got that. I mean, I got a lot out of those 3 plants, and phenomenal smoke. So now, I remember when we were talking about this, and I said and you asked me if I had collected any pollen or if I had any clones, and I said I have 6 beans left. So that means one or two things. Might get lucky, get 4 out of the 6 are female, and the other 2 are males. When I decide to grow this strain again, and I can collect some pollen, and we can have some fun with it. Because I will say this, I actually pulled it out yesterday too to show somebody. Was over the house yesterday, and I was showing them all my years of growing since I started growing here, and I pulled out the Weedman 420 experimental strain, and like I said, there's just chunkers left, there's headies left, there's just monsters, and he's like, look at those fucking nugs. I said, man, my guy Wes, my guy Big Earl, man, he's the man. That's his genetics. I said I got some beans left, and I said, but this was like my favorite grow because these things were monsters when they grew in the tent, and it was a good genetic. It was all about genetics, so which we'll talk about on another show. But I mean, so in honor of our show, our 3rd show together, I'm smoking an oldie but a goodie, the
nice
420 Chronicles experimental strain. So I'm gonna hit it up while you tell everybody what you're smoking.
Yeah, I can tell them now because I have a microphone. Hopefully that everybody can hear me. Sorry about last episode, guys. If anybody has any questions getting stuff started and you can't hear something, just always hit us up. We love talking to everybody. I'm smoking, so I just harvested not long ago, so nothing's dry yet. But one of the strains, I had like 50 seeds going, so you got to watch for herms. You never know. I like to push everything 10 weeks, but I noticed at the end of 9, I had some little bananas starting to poke through my flowers. So I cut it down, didn't get a very good flush on it, but I happened to take a big bud out and kind of fast dried it. So it didn't get a good flush, and it only got an 8-day dry, but it's one of my new sparkling wines. So I had to bring it out for the show, of course.
Hell yeah, and you're rolling a big fat joint. Smoking a big fatty. Big doink.
I only take a few puffs off of it, but I just wanted to taste it.
Is it still a little wet?
It's not too wet. I had it drying pretty. I didn't have it like in my dry tent or anything. I just had it like straight out on top of my jar with a fan on it. Like I was just pushing it to dry. Because of not flushing it very well, I kind of figured I was probably going to take most of it to wax anyway. So I was like, I'll just see my flavor on it. I knew I wasn't going to keep it because none of the other ones hermed at all. This was just, it wanted to be done, and I like to run it a little longer. So,
gotcha.
But it tastes pretty good. I did try to smoke it a little wet a couple days ago. It was a little more wet than it is now. And it gave me like a very weird pepper, like a fresh pepper, not like pepper flakes. Like you go and eat a bell pepper flavor. And right now it's not really giving me that flavor.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Do you like? I have terrible taste buds, and I think it's because of all the years of smoking. And so Mrs. Weedman is my. She really can taste flavors. I can taste a few. It has to be really pungent. Like the Weedman 420 Chronicles has a nice little piney flavor to it, but it also sometimes I'll catch a lemon flavor to it. But that's really I'll catch one flavor off of stuff. I know people that can catch 2-3 flavors. I'm not that good. Like with wine, if someone tells me they tasted this, and that, I'm like, Yeah, dog, I ain't with that.
It tasted good to me.
Yeah, it's a good
I
wine.
I I
Didn't
follow
burn my tongue.
parents
I
more
like
than
it.
I follow parents more than being like, oh, this is like that. It's easier for me to be like, oh, I'm sensing a lot of the mom in this strain, or I'm sensing a lot of the dad in this strain, or whatever it is. I'm not very good. Like people are like, oh, that's real OG, or that's real this, or that's real that. I honestly am not super good at being like, oh, this tastes just like the 1999 Death Star. Like I'm not, you
Ah,
know, I appreciate them all, but I just am not very good at recognizing it, I guess, yet.
I do appreciate people that have a really good palate that can taste many flavors and many when it comes to beer, wine, food, cannabis. You know, Mrs. Weeman's great. She loves candy, so she's can taste, smell. I mean, it's awesome. I was a heavy, not a heavy, but I was a heavy tobacco smoker
Sure.
when in my younger years too. So I've been always been told tobacco smoke ruins your taste buds. So that could be possibly why my taste buds aren't that great. But like I said, I catch one flavor. I can definitely tell people how the high is though.
Sure, yeah. And that's important, like the flavor's nice, but the how the effects is a little
Effects.
different for
I
everybody, but
can
important.
spot on that. Spot on the effects. So we are going into another episode, and we are talking about cloning versus seeds, or seeds versus cloning. And
Yeah.
I I have not. I'm excited about this episode. Very excited about this episode because I have had nothing but bad luck with cloning, and you and I have had many conversations about it. I only have one tent, so the cloning is not. I just don't have the tent for it to where I can keep the humidity where it needs to be at, room to put stuff in. I've tried and I failed miserably, and it gets frustrating because I'm like, oh man, I only got one seed left of this one. I really wish I knew how to clone,
Yeah.
get better at it, and I can just keep that lineage going. Unfortunately, haven't had luck. I am a seed starter. I haven't even tried autos yet. I'm with the photos right from the beginning to end. So I enjoy seed because that's what I know right now. Hopefully, one day, as I get better at growing, as I have a bigger grow space area, I can get into cloning because you can just keep some lineages going. You can have some fun with it. You can keep on turn. You can get what? How many realistically? Before we even go into the episode, how much can you clone a plant? This is what I was thinking about this before we started the show. How much can you take off of one plant realistically without hurting it to clone?
Oh, I mean, so cloning is gonna be stressful no matter what. Just like taking off leaves, you'll take off leaves, and you will notice, especially if it's way over cluttered, that things are a little happier. But it's still stressful for the plant. Um, so really, with cloning, you can take everything off as long as you have a few leaves left on there that can photosynthesize for your plant and can keep it alive. So you're talking, a nice sized plant, you get hundreds of clones off of probably.
Sweet.
So
That's awesome. Because you can keep a mother plant for a long time too that people use for cloning, right? Off of a mother plant too. Is that how some people do it also?
yeah, everybody's a little different with it. Some people will follow their like flips, so they'll be like, okay, I'm gonna flip this into flour. I'm gonna take my clones. They give everything like real low power, and so then it takes them 2 months to get through their cloning and through their veg, and then by the time that they cut down and do everything, they can take their clones again, flip those back in. That's not really keeping a mom. Then it's just kind of it's generationing. It's
Okay.
putting another generation on your clone every time, which I don't know if it's ever been proven, but it's definitely like the reasons we don't see, oh, this strain used to be really popular, that strain used to be really popular. Weed is getting a little bit higher in THC, but weed's always been, for a while at least, been pretty good. So they kind of fall off in their vigor and different things generally. But I've also heard of clones getting better. So like typically with my seed hunts, I will hunt the seeds and I take my first clone off the seed itself. And then a lot of people want to keep that seed plant to be the mom, but I want to flip that seed plant as fast as possible to first off figure out what clones I can get rid of if it's a male, and the second off, just see how that plant is. Because I'll take clones. If I have 10 of one plant, that means I have to take 10 clones. And the faster I can say, okay, this is my winner, the easier it is for me to say, okay, I'm throwing out these other nine. I'm going to keep this one, let it get a little bigger, take my clones, and now I have my mother plant.
Uh,
So, but yeah, you can take a lot of clones. I mean, if it's a smaller plant, maybe just one or two, but a nice sized plant, 4 or 5 foot tall that's branched out nice, anything that's over a few inches long with a couple nodes on it, you can take a clone off very
Gee,
easily.
that's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, why do we clone then? Let's go
So
over cloning.
yeah, so the cloning to me is like you said to keep that exact genetic around. So we're lucky enough. Definitely, we use it medicinally in different ways, but a lot of it's recreational. A lot of it's not. It's not like we are like we have this exact problem we're trying to overcome, and it's very specific to this strain. So when it's like that, like how Charlotte's Web, that's a famous CBD, it was made
Oh yeah,
for a girl called Charlotte. Well, if they would have made seeds out of that, or even if they that would have been a seed, and they had 1,000 brothers and sisters of that Charlotte's Web, they wouldn't. All of them would have been a little different. Not some of them might have worked for her, but none of them would have been that exact copy. Just like every sister and brother. If you have 100 sisters and 100 brothers, and there's 201 of you, and you're all going to be a little different. A lot of you will be very similar.
I feel bad for the mom on that one. Jeez.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Yes, that's. But it's all going to be. That's kind of how it is with it. So when you talk about these famous strains, you're typically talking about a specific clone or cut of that strain. So when people talk about Cushman's, right, that's one that's been around a lot. People know it. Well, Cushman's, there's a ton of seeds out there, but there's only one Cushman's 11. That is a famous, and I know there's some other numbers out there too, but the 11 was the first one I knew of, or the one that I'm most comfortable with, the one that I had. And so that is an exact clone of what Seed Junkie in that situation bred with. Um, and that's where the big difference comes in because somebody else, you can do it with, I'm just going to keep it to famous names like Runts. You'll run, half people say Runts is awful, half people say Runts is fantastic. And really, it comes down to two things: what runt you got, what genetics, what seed, and how you grew it. So, somebody might have a really bad representation of what runts usually is. So clone is really nice because you can get that exact replica plant. No brother or sister, it's the exact plant. It's really nice because you can take a ton of clones off of them, like we just talked about. And you can get clones, you get these big facilities, they can't run those seeds. So they can get a clone and they can take 1,000 clones and get, 500 pounds of the same plant, the exact same bud, and you can go from dispensary A to dispensary B, and you can know you're getting the exact same bud.
I've been to one. I've been to I've been to a couple cultivators, but I've been in one of their cloning rooms. Man, it
Yeah,
is
they
packed with
yeah,
clones. Like I asked them, like, "Oh, we got 1,000 clones in this one room, and then we got
yeah.
another 1,000 clones in another room." Like, whoa.
A lot of the license don't count the clones. Like if they're in a pot small enough, or if the plant's under a certain size, they don't count those plants. So I know whenever I was running the bigger license up here, we had a ton of clones, but as long as they were in solos and they weren't over like 8 inches tall or something, they didn't actually count towards our plant number. So that was cool.
That's good.
Um, when you do that many, also, it's way cheaper to clone. So you're talking, 25, maybe 50 cents a clone tops. Um, where with seeds, you can get quite a bit more. It can get pretty drastically expensive depending on what you want to do. Sometimes you can find them that cheap, but it gets more expensive. Another reason people like clones is because they're faster. It takes you about 2 weeks to get roots and to have a clone ready to come out of its dome. Really much faster than that for a lot of people. But by 2 weeks, if you're not seeing roots, you probably usually what I would say is either the mom's not happy or your brick is too wet. So, but usually I see roots on almost everything in about 8 days. I've seen people do it faster, but it's faster to clone. So you have that. It takes you, let's say, 2 weeks, then you bring it out. So at the end of 3 weeks, you have a plant that's already 6 to 8 inches tall. It's already adapted to your environment and it's already ready to grow. Where when you do a seed, you're talking probably like a week to get it up and germinated and like an inch tall, maybe. Another week to get it, you're probably talking another 2 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks to really get a nice 8 inch plant on a seed.
Right.
So the clone's going to go a little faster, not much faster. And if you overwater your clone, you mess it up a little bit, something like that, it might take you the same time. You get really vigorous seeds, they might grow really fast. You never know, but in general, the clone's going to be a little faster than the seed. Um, so what
What's
exactly is a clone,
Yeah?
right?
What is a clone? I mean, here's my thing. When I've tried to clone, and watching some videos and reading some articles and talking, to people and you, and just trying to figure it out. I mean, a clone to me, the first time I learned about cloning was Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The movie from back in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And actually, they did a remake of it too, I think in the 90s or early 2000s too. It's called Invasion of the Body Snatchers. If you like B-rated horror movies and stuff, that's when I first heard and remember the word clone. Kind of crazy.
That's fun. Hey, and they were cloning people in that. I'm assuming.
They were
I
cloning
don't think I
people.
saw that one.
They were cloning people. It was a space like like an alien microbe that came into and flowered a plant, and it would take over the body of somebody that it saw, or felt like it took like maybe like a skin piece off its body with a tentacle or something, and then the pod would grow, and that new person would pop out, and then that person would die. It was crazy. So that's
It's
the first
almost
time I heard the word clone.
that kind of reminds me, not that it's about a clone, but the movie Blob. That was the first movie that really like petrified me. The Blob when I was a kid.
Blob, yeah.
Saw it at a block like party. It was like in a tent. I was sitting there by myself. And I still remember it. I don't remember much. But I remember that.
Okay, now how I'm going to ask you: do you remember the black and white one? Was it the black and white one? Did you watch, or did you watch the one with what's his name? Matt Dillon's brother, Kevin Dillon, the remake in like the '90s. Which one did you wind up watching? The original.
Man, it was so I can't remember that. It was in. I remember it was like a little projector in a tent, and it was probably in 1992. So I was probably like 5 or 6, maybe 7.
Probably the black and white one.
So yeah, black and white sounds more realistic to me, but I honestly can't remember. I just remember that thing would take people over, and other people didn't know what was going on, and all of a sudden take them over. It scared me.
So, since we gave a little joke about a clone, tell us about what is a clone.
So to me, when you say what is a clone to me is just a cutting from a plant, usually a softer like stemmed plant, not something like woody. Woody plants don't clone it well, but a cutting of a plant that you turn into its very own plant. Um, Grow weed easy. I like their definition of it because it was just I don't know, but they say and I like Grow Weed Easy. If anybody's never ever looking for a decent website, I do go there every now and again just to be like, this is right, right? And it says basically you just want to cut away a small part of the plant. The roots will grow out of the cut you made, and the rest of the cutting will start growing into an individual plant. So um, that's really all it is. It's just taking your plant, taking a little, cutting. If you cut your pinky off and could put it in some dirt and grow another one of you, that's what it's doing.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So with the clones now, right? We have different ways of cloning. What way did you try to clone? Remember, did you use Rockwell cubes, like brown cubes?
No, unfortunately, I didn't because I didn't have any, and I didn't get. But the last two times I've tried, I used that little cloning gel, and I put it in some. I had that little dirt you can start a seed, germinate a seed in, and
Oh,
stuff like
okay.
that. I put that, it didn't work, so I tried it
Sure.
twice, and then I just tried it in water. Oh no, another time I tried was an old Greek guy taught me this. He transferred over a fig tree from Greece when he came over here in the 50s, and he had a clone that he kept in his pocket. He cut a little piece of the fig tree off, wrapped it in a paper towel, and then wrapped it again in tinfoil or some kind of
Oh,
and then carried that with him on a ship. And he said and I remember he telling me this, and he goes, "That's how I clone my fig trees. Is that I would, and that's how I get once it starts rooting, then I plant it." So I did that one time too, and it worked. I got little roots, and I
nice.
planted it on my windowsill, just in a little. Mrs. Weedman wanted to just see if we could do it, so I planted it on in the windowsill in a little Dixie cup, a little like solo cup, and it stayed there all summer long, and it grew one little nuggy, and that was it.
Nice. That's fun. Hey, that's fun.
It worked.
Um, so usually people, the two things I see the most are peat which would be like a little brown cube, like stuck together with a little hole in it. Root Riot, I think, is most known in the industry,
Yes, I think
and
I
then
think it was Pete that I used.
like a
And
little,
then
yeah. And they have like good starting, like people use peat and just stick it into those starting trays and do it kind of the same way, but they make cubes that already come like that. And I like those a lot, and most people use something like that. And then you have rock wool, and these are going to be the two without a machine, right? These are going to be the two uh, most simple and cheapest ways. So both of them work really well to me. I use peat, or I'm sorry, I use rock wool. I used to use peat. I stopped using peat because I started noticing at the shop I was at, we would get giant bags of like 1,500 at a time. And I started noticing they were coming in with white mold on it. And so I lost a whole tray to this weird white mold that grew from the squares up my plant. And like as soon as I got on my plant, I just sprayed off with H2O2, but the plant was gone. Like that's part of
wow.
this. If I tried to pull it out, the whole plant just pulled off at that part of the stem. And so when I let it go, it just grew all the way up the plant. And so I noticed that on the cubes, then that happened to my dome, and I was like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. And when I went to Rockwell, I was surprised it's very, very similar. You do the exact same soaks, you do the exact same pHs, the exact same everything. It's just a different color and made of something different. So, so with those, you need a tray for a stand to sit in. You need the the insert itself. You need a dome. The dome needs to keep in the humidity if you want to get a good percent. You got that's cool. You got it in that cup. I've never seen them clone without having like a dome over them for humidity. So
I
that's
think
awesome.
you know what I think I was already kind of like in the flower stage of the plant anyway. It was like the first couple weeks of flower, and I had this little one down at the bottom that wasn't. It was being covered by everything. So like I said, I just cut it and did it, and it rooted, and I just so it could have been that. It wasn't like from like it didn't take it. It just but it was on my windowsill for like 5 weeks and a little bud. So just think
Yeah,
about
that's
the
cool
time.
though.
So yeah, so it wasn't not. I mean, it was like I mean, it was so minute, and but like I said, it was already. I think because the plant was already in the flower stage. That why it wasn't a really a true clone grow. That's all I can remember from it. And Mrs. Weedman was so excited. She goes, "Look at that little nug." I said, "I don't know how the hell that fucking happened, but it did."
Hey, that's take it how you can get it. That's fun. That's like a fun experiment to see every morning in the kitchen. So with those, you need your tray and your inserts and your domes and all that. A cloning light usually it's gonna be a little smaller. T5s, they make LEDs that replace T5s, just like a low powered LED in general. You just don't want a lot of power going to them. You need a bucket to soak your cubes in because you have to soak them beforehand. If the peat moss or the rock wool, you soak in a pH 5.5, and use a pH reader or something that can at least get you down there. Can help a lot. That is the acidity can it directly impacts what nutrients can be uptaken easier and faster, and it works much better in my experience at least.
So
And
let me
then
ask
you'll
you
need
a
a
question
nutrient.
about lighting.
Yeah,
Do you need to do that though? Can you just use the lights you have in your tent if you keep the lights far away? If you have a controller knob that you can keep temperature of, or so can you? I mean, if some people only have one tent and they
sure.
want to clone. Because I've seen tents where they have a cloning on the side, like some of the tents come with a cloning attachment or a cloning like area in the tents. Those are pretty cool. Where you could do the cloning, where you could just put some little low level lights, like you said, in there, or like if I wanted to keep say all I had was my tent, and I already have two plants in there, and I want to clone, and I really like this strain. This is all I got, and I want to clone. Can I just get like a little heat lamp and put it there? Not a heat lamp, but a little lamp, uh, and just put the dome underneath and let it sit out, or does it have to be like in a certain space area? Because there's people, I mean, someone like me that's unknowledgeable when it comes to cloning has failed miserably at it, but
Sure.
I want to clone. Do I have to have like a whole area to do it, or can I just take the dome, put up, put it like on top of my workbench and put the lighting over it, or does it have to have like that specific humidity going at all times? And is there an easy way to do it also? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Sure. So the dome is everything there. Yeah, you can if you have the dome to go over your plant to keep in that humidity, you can for sure do that. If you don't, if you have that 1/10 though, and let's say so you veg it and then you're going to flower, right? And well, now you have these clones and you don't have anywhere else for them to grow taller. That's not unless you can have them outside the tent somehow. But anything that goes into that tent would then be flowering. So it would be pretty hard unless you're okay with having a couple plants just sitting out on the workbench. Also, they don't need any crazy amount of light. You just need something to. eh, The more light and everything, the better. To a certain extent, but you can definitely finagle around that a little bit.
Okay.
Um, but it's all about that dome. If you have that dome there, the humidity on the outside of that dome can be whatever. Inside that dome is going to be 99.9% water up on the plastic dome. Like it's going to be humid in there,
Right.
and it might be easier, if you had a tent because when you bring them out of that, it's pretty specific to bring them out of the cloning stage and to adapt them to your area. And so I found, when I can have my bedroom 75 or 80% humidity, which is pretty high, I can bring them out with like little to no stress. But I have lost one of my very first hunts, one of the very first hunts that really made me be like, wow, there's this stuff out there where I wasn't taking clones from somebody else or plants from somebody else. I had everything cloned. I brought it out of the cloner, and it was one of the very first super cold days of the year, and the humidity had to have been like I didn't even have a reader at that point, probably like 30% in my room, and it just immediately I came back down like a couple hours later, and everything was dead. So, and it was just that fast. So, that transition is nice to have somewhere. But if you don't have somewhere, you can make that transition by just taking the lid off, 2 hours one day, 4 hours the next day, six, eight. Do that maybe 4 or 5 days in a row until you can work up to having it off all the time. The biggest problem there is going to be watering those because those little cubes are going to run out of water pretty fast if you have the
Gotcha.
top off of that. They're
Gotcha.
going to dry out. So having an area definitely helps, but you can definitely do it without. I've taken cocoa, put it in a 1 gallon pot, taken like a pitcher that measures a 2,000 milliliter clear pitcher that I use to pour like nutrients into, and I've cut off like I had a plant. The first time I ever did it, I had a plant. I was trimming stuff up. I accidentally cut off the entire plant. It was like a little guy, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, what am I gonna do?" So I just stuck it back into its pot and put the top over it, and I was like, "I'm gonna try to clone this," and it worked very, very well, so fast. And I've done it a couple times since then, where I was like, "Well, I don't want to get out, soak the cubes, go through all this, waste a razor, open up my cloning gel, and waste a little cloning gel for one clone. I'm just going to stick this into that cocoa and put my 2,000 milliliter clear measuring cup over the top of it." And dude, it worked so fast. I was very surprised. So there, you can definitely be creative with it, but the big thing is holding your humidity there.
I got
So, and then it also helps too. Having cloning gel really helps. There is a big science on that now. We talked about umami, I think, last episode, or maybe the first episode. He was going over some different like actual properties of the cloning gel to look for, and I'm not as knowledgeable in that. I'm not super comfortable talking about it, but cloning gel in general works really, really well. Dip and grow I like. The root tech I really like. I've done side by sides with like 5 or 6 different ones, and they're all very similar. Like I get roots right away. Having sterile scalpel, or at least like sterile, really sharp scissors really helps. And then having a spray bottle. I like to feed when I first put them into the dome. I like to give them a foliar food because I know they don't have roots and they can't uptake food through the roots. So I give them a foliar food on that very first day, and then I see roots usually day 7 or 8, and I'll give them another foliar because the foliar I use is every 7 days, and so they seem to love it.
Sweet. Love it.
But yeah, guys, to do it that way, we'll go back the tray, the insert, the dome on there, a pH reader in a bucket, even a pH reader for a pool, just so you can get it a little lower than usually the faucet's going to come out between 7 and 8, just to get down to that 5, 5, 6. A small light or area, and a light nutrient, and you can get those going that way. And for either way, with the clone machine or with those, you'll also need some gel, and then the scissors and scalpel we just talked about, and a spray bottle will help. So, because we were going to go, we just talked about our cubes, but if you don't like cubes, in a way that I think you should try, Mr. Weedman, is a cloning machine because it's a little more expensive, but it's way easier. Like
Okay.
it's like a set it and forget it. Um, and that's what my parents with the hemp farm, they're having all these problems cloning. I was like, found this little bubbler machine. They only used it once, but they actually could clone with it.
Okay.
once so far, hopefully. Um, so with the clone machines, two different types. There's or at least two different main types. Everybody can rig up all kinds of stuff. I've seen people do crazy stuff, but two main types. You have one with a pump that actually pumps through a manifold and sprays. Think about like little sprinklers down there just spraying the bottom of your plants. And then there's going to be one just with a air stone. Both of these are going to go into, if you think of like a storage tub, a smaller one, into that, and into the bottom, the storage tub will be halfway full of water. The air stones, the air comes up and pops and splashes everywhere, and the other one sprays. Oh, drop my mic, sprays everywhere. And
It's all right. It happens to the best of us.
and so the one that sprays everywhere is typically a little bit more expensive. You have more parts. You have to have like the sprinkler head. You have to have the actual manifold itself, which is just like what takes the water from the pump to the sprinklers. And they get warmer because that pump is inside there, constantly turning. It's a magnet turning with it. So I typically like to go after the air stone ones. It's an air pump. The air pumps will get a little warm, but you can manipulate that with how cool your room is. If it's getting a little warm in there, you just try to get the room a little cooler. The air stone pump is using that.
Is the
Air.
air pump is the air is the same thing you put in a fish tank?
Yes, literally exactly the same.
Okay. And I've seen people post videos like that. I've seen people like rig, like you said, in a like a like a like a container, like a holding container, like a packaging container, and it's like one of those yellow and black ones, and they put like 8 on one side, 8 on the other, and they open it up, and you see all those beautiful white roots, and you just see that water just flowing and flowing like it looks like a kind of looks like you're in a jacuzzi, kind
Sure.
of where it's flowing in a circle or flowing around like crazy, and must be the air stone in there that is just blowing nice, and blowing the water and the nutrients through the whole entire thing, keeping the water flowing. And the beautiful root balls, man, just stuff that I've seen some of these people rig up.
They
Amazing.
get huge. People, and I've seen people be like, "Oh man, these I let these go to teens, and they'll be like 3 or 4 foot tall, and their roots will be just as long as it is tall, just wrapped up in the bottom." But yes, that's if it's bubbling and it's coming up from the bottom like that. It's the bubblers and the air stones. If it's actually spraying from different locations, like almost like a 360 or 180, some of them are 180 sprinklers, then that would be the manifold. And underneath that, there'd be a pump under the little piping down there. But the one that you were talking about with the air stones, they're cheaper. They're easier for you to make yourself. First off, because you can literally get any tote, an air pump, and air stone. If you had an old fish tank, like you said, you probably have all the stuff. You want to use new air stones. You can wash them. I like to wash them too before I put them in there because there'll be like a little bit of loose stone in there and stuff. They stay cooler, and it's way easier to control the bacteria in there because instead of having to get all new piping, all new pump, all new everything, you can just get a new air stone and some new tubing and pretty much completely change out anything that could be building up bacteria.
Do you have to put a dome over it or no?
Yes, same thing. If you're in a tent where you can keep the humidity up, which I've seen tents, so I've seen tents, they're pretty cool. It's like 2 foot tall by like 3 foot wide, and they're made for those little trays to slide in and out
That's
of.
cool.
Yeah, so you can put it on like a workbench or something, or just, they do the ones that have domes tend to be a little bit more expensive because when you buy all this stuff made, and making the domes yourself are kind of hard. But if you got a tote that was clear and let actual absorbable light through, you just have to see what plastic it was. I think most clear totes would be all right. You could probably do that pretty cheaply yourself.
Gotcha. Cool.
So, and that's great options, especially if you tried cloning and you've had trouble. The clone machine is a super nice option compared to that.
When it comes
It's,
time, we'll talk more, and I'll do some research.
yes, yeah, and it's we talking about that dome. It is super important, that humidity. That's a part where a lot of people have a problem bringing it out of the dome into the room because it goes through such a shock of being 99.9% humidity to coming out of the room. And if your room isn't, I've seen people do it and spraying their plants a few times a day. But if your room's really low humidity, it's really a hard thing to do without getting a lot of stress and a lot of, like, I've had plants before where like they just stopped growing, and then I noticed like new green growth, and it's almost like a re-veg. like revegetating. Like, oh,
Huh.
now I can grow again, like a whole new like old plant's dead. I'm just growing out of it, kind of thing. So
Yeah, humidity. You and I have had conversations. Humidity in my house in the wintertime is the worst.
hard.
Even though I mean it's so dry in the south side of Chicago in the wintertime. I mean to try to get my humidity up to like 50% at least is like the
Yeah,
tops most of the time in the wintertime. And I mean that's like running a humidifier constantly on full blast and having like cups of water throughout the whole tent too, which really doesn't do
sure.
much, but at least it's something. I mean I probably could run two humidifiers or get a I can't get a bigger one because there's no room in there, but have two of the same size ones in there to run that humidity up at
Sure.
times when I need it too. You know,
The
because
lights zap that humidity too.
what's up? The light does too.
Yeah, the light will zap that humidity too. So at night you'll notice the humidity goes up, and then at day it'll be like, oh no, I gotta add humidity here.
So you always notice at night when your lights go off and you wake up in the morning, you go downstairs before your tent goes on. You know, everything the lights go on and it's at like 75%. You're like, what the fuck happened
Yeah.
there?
Light's not zapping it, and your plant's perspiring at night. So
Yeah, and if you don't, if
they're
you forget
taking
to
up.
lower your humidifier down a little bit, like I'll adjust mine at night because I know that happens. So one time, if you forget every once in a while, you're gonna see a jacked up humidity. So
Yeah.
that
Well, if you do
happens.
have that, you can just like take it off for an hour one day, take it off for 2 hours the next day, like the dome, and try to adjust it to it. No plant's gonna really like super low humidity, or no cannabis plant at least. But you can adjust it and like take the stress off of it if you do run into something like that when you are cloning.
Got it.
Um, so it's possible. It's just not super fun, um, to deal with.
Trust me.
So
No, I'm always running to the tent
yeah,
when
yeah.
it's time and checking it.
Dude, humidity. I have, I think, like four little humidifiers downstairs I don't use anymore because it's such like a peculiar. Sometimes I'm like, wow, this tent is really dry, and so I just throw my little 1 gallon humidifier on the lowest setting I can in there, and or wow, this area of my house is really dry for because I have little sensors everywhere that read other sensors. So it's such a particular weird thing. You might find a corner of your basement and it's super humid over there. So you just don't put a lot of airflow to get that humidity out of there, and whatever it is, you're in an
Right.
old dingy basement. You might not dingy is in a bad way, but dingy is in like you got your humidity. So so with the clones now, so there's the two main ways people do them a ton of ways, the clone machine and the cubes. But there's also these techniques of taking the actual clones. How many nodes down? How do you take them? How do you treat the actual cut? Do you scrape it? Do you put crosses in it? Do you cut into the bottom? Um, so to scrape or not to scrape is a big question too that I have never heard somebody really fully answer. Um,
I've never heard that before. To scrape or
so
not scrape.
the theory there is exposing more of the inside of the plant on the bottom by gently scraping off the outside of the skin is going to make it root faster. And then on that same theory, if you cut into the bottom an X or just a single slice, depends on who you are, also gives more surface area for your gel or whatever hormone you're using to root. So that's the thought there. I personally don't see a ton of difference. With that said, I usually do scrape at least. If I don't scrape, I will put just a single slice. It's almost like a superstition. But on Grow Weed Easy again, um, they had something to say about scraping, which I was excited about. I said many growers gently scrape or even split the bottom of the cutting so more raw insides get exposed. The roots grow most easily from the parts of the stem that are raw. So scraping and splitting expose more insides, which gives more surface area for roots to grow out and promotes faster rooting. So I've never seen like a study or a peer review on that. I've seen a lot of people say this and that, and I've taken clones with different people where they have their technique. Different products tell you to do different things. If you have a liquid cloning, you sit your plant in there sometimes for 30 seconds. Sometimes you just have to dip it. If you have a gel cloning, so you usually put it in there for like 3 or 4 seconds, then you can pull it out. Some gel clones are water soluble and some aren't, so you might treat them a little differently. Like I've seen people put water soluble gel into water, and then they dip their clone in that water, and just different things like that. Um, but the X and the scrape and just what you do to the bottom, I think, is kind of what you like, what you think you get better results out of, or if it's worth your time. But I can say a cloning gel for sure is doing something there is for sure worth your time. So
Gotcha.
um, that can I've done it without gel before. Way longer. Plants aren't happy. Like it's just not super fun. I tried to do it with aloe vera once. It was kind of the same thing. Just didn't work as well. But I've seen people use aloe vera. So, but and so another thing people argue about, which has been come out as proven, right, is trimming the leaves on the plants. So the theory is you trim the leaves off, like the tips of the leaves. I've been told a third of the leaf, and it tells the plant to focus on the roots and not on photosynthesizing, not on the leaves, because the leaves have been attacked or for whatever various reasons. I've heard a couple different reasons. But since then, it has been proven. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to. I listened to a bunch of different, read a bunch of different stuff where I read it at, but that cutting those leaves further stresses your plant, and they can have that leaf to. It doesn't do anything about telling your plant not to photosynthesize or to grow roots. It just takes part of a leaf away that could be helping that plant if it wasn't 100%. It can eat the leaf to stay alive. So you're taking away a third of its reservoir, you know. So and that has been, I do agree if you're taking like 50 clones in a little space. Sometimes if you're really good at cloning, you can take those. They can all fit in there. Everything's happy. Nothing's like clumping up on itself and growing mold, and there aren't leaves on leaves on leaves. And you can see little to no stress. I've seen people do it. But in general, as many leaves as you can get, and as full and as little stress as you can give that cutting is going to be the best way to take that clone.
When is the best time to take the clone and the grow? What veg, right? I presume.
So no, actually, it depends on what best means. So when you take a
When's
clone,
the right time? I guess then.
sure. So that it depends on when you like to take it, but nitrogen in a plant grows the plant. So this is about growing the plant or the roots. Potassium is one of the main builder in the roots. So when you talk about veg, usually in veg you have a higher potassium also, but you're generally talking about higher nitrogen. I've been told, and I take my clones in veg because I don't want to have to re-veg them. I've been told the fastest roots happen early flower because that's when you're first coming off of your nitrogen and you're starting to lower it, and you usually introduce a potassium boost, or at least I do at the beginning and the end of flower. Um, and so I have done that to like preserve a plant, and they root pretty fast, but then they stall and re-veg. So the plant just sits there with this little bud on there, and then all of a sudden a new branch starts growing out of that bud. So
Cool.
for most people, I would say the best time to clone would be like a week before they go into flower, because that gives the plant a little bit of time to recoup, to shake off that any stress before it goes into flower, because taking it into flower itself is stressful. We don't do it naturally. We just flip it to 12 and say good fucking luck. So, it's not like we're going, oh, we're at 18.6 and now we're at 17.7. Now we don't usually do that. So and it's a whole new atmosphere. Usually it's a different room, or you at least change something. You're lowering or raising humidities. Like all those changes can be stressful to your plant. So usually I would say people try to take their clones about a week before they go into flower,
Okay.
if they're
That
taken off of those plants. If they have a mother, then they'd probably take those clones like between week 2 and week 4 of flower, because then they get, or at least depending on how big they grow their plant. But for me, I grow about a 4 square foot plant, and I want 2 weeks for my clone, and I want about 4 weeks for my veg. And so if I take week 4, that's perfect. It gives me a week to clean and do everything, and then I can come in with my plant's perfect size.
And then where in the plant do you take the clone from?
So has been debated also. That depends on what you're going for as well. I typically take from the top, not because it's the easiest or the best. The top's going to have the most nitrogen because that's where most of the growth is going on, just like we just talked. But I do it because I cut back my moms. Like I usually keep a mom or two, at least. And if not, I'm keeping this plant, and I'm fight with space and with numbers. So I do weird stuff sometimes just to be like, okay, I don't want two of that plant, so I'm going to do this and whatever, cut this plant down just to its last branch and just let it regrow or whatever I got to do. Um, but I like to take them on the top because it cuts them down. On the bottom will get you faster, healthier clones generally because it's less nitrogen. It's going to be like more green typically. And that's just where a lot of people say to take them from. I've always taken them from the top because it just helps me keep my plants lower and cleaner.
Okay.
So, and
Makes
people
sense.
typically say at least 3 nodes. You want at least 3 nodes on that. I've never seen that scientifically. I never read that or heard that like we did a study and out of these 1,000 plants, I just have heard that what people say. So I typically take mine like 6 to 8 inches tall.
Okay. Sweet. Cool. Seeds.
Yes, so that's clones. So if anybody has any more questions, it's a lot of information. So holler at us though. If you need some help, we'll help you. Seeds.
Seeds. The way I go.
I love seeds. Um,
Yeah, you should have got a lot of them in your fridge.
do. I do. Dude, when they started talking about patenting genetics, I like had a revelation. I was like, okay, this can't be like apples. I know there's a ton of people out there doing it, and it won't ever be like that. But um, every single seed can be different, right? Like it will be different. It's like snowflakes. You might think that one's prettier, and I might think this one's prettier, but damn it, they're both unique. Um, it is a way to find something like truly unique and different. People talk about that's why. So with clones, and don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on anybody, but everybody wants these special clones. Oh, I grew this, I grew that, and to me, it's like, man, if somebody else already grew it, like, unless it's something where it's something like I heard this takes care of nausea real well, totally get that. But if everybody's growing it, like I if I can go to my buddy and buy it, I'd rather just go to my buddy and buy an eighth, smoke it, and be like, oh, that's what the ice cream cake is like. And I'm talking shit. I have the ice cream cake, but I'm just saying because I do like to dabble into it, so I can see what I can do with the plant. I want to see every time you smoke something, you don't know how well the dude grew it or if it's the real cut or what it is, and so I just like to see it. So when somebody says that grows like the Gorilla Glue 4, I can say, okay, I grew that. I know how that grows. I know what to expect from this. But seeds are can be found very cheap, can be found very expensive. To start, they're typically cheaper. We talked about how clones are less expensive to actually like if you have all the equipment. But if you're just getting started, a seed you need like a solo cup and some medium, and a paper towel and maybe like a little Tupperware, and you don't. That's like getting a little fancy with it even. You want something to definitely germinate it in. Um, you want something to grow it in, and that's it. You don't need a dome. You can use the same light that you had, which you want a little farther away, just like the clone. You don't need humidifiers, stuff like that. Although they do, a lot of people will put plastic. Like a lot of people pop in solo cups, and then they'll take those 9-ounce plastic party cups and put it upside down over the top.
I've done that twice.
Works pretty well.
Yeah.
That was the theory on the 1 gallon and the 2,000 milliliter measuring cup that I had when I took like big branch clones. Um, but
once it gets to like 3 inches, 2, 3 inches, and the leaves at the end, it comes off. So
yeah,
it's done. The solo cup.
yeah, and it's pretty. So you can pop them pretty cheaply, and typically a seed plant is stronger. When you start to clone, now I have heard of people saying, "Oh, it got stronger," and I do run mine one generation into clone just to see how it acts. But that's to see if it falls off hard, really. I've never had it happen like generation 1, 2, 3, even like the first like 5 or 6 generations. But I've definitely gotten plants and like from somebody or even had them myself, gotten rid of it and then gotten it back like a couple years later, and it just wasn't the same. So I believe that it degrades them a little bit usually, Especially if you're taking unhealthy plants, if you let that plant get really sick, if it almost dies at some point. I think that is really when you start to see the cloning degradation of its offspring or of the clones. Generation one, two, three, four, all that of clones.
Wow.
You also with seeds don't have to worry about bringing in a viroid from somebody else's garden, molds, mildews. You don't have to worry about bringing in bugs, which is huge. When I was at the shop, people come in. I don't know how I got. What are these? I don't know how I got these. Oh well, that's spider mites. I don't know how we got these. Question number one: where did you get your clones from? You don't have to ask even if they ordered clones. Where
Right.
did you get your clones from? Because 99% of the time, that's where your mildew came from, your mites, it's where it came from. If now that doesn't mean you can't bring it in on yourself. Animals for sure will bring it in if you let your dog in your area, which I will in my veg occasionally in my basement. So your yard, I have my
Your
garden.
dogs do not go in your flower room, though.
Fuck no, no, not in the flower room.
They do
But
not
I
go.
got,
They stop at that fucking door.
they know,
Was
dude.
there at your place, and they did not go past. They knew not to go through.
They can hang out there all day, and every time I come over to them, I'll give them a treat, and they will kick it. And but they just like hanging out, So I like having them in there in the veg room and looking over and seeing them just sleep with a little fan on them or whatever. But I do use, I take precautions for it. I use diatomaceous earth for them. I use it in my yard. I use it in my room. I spray it all over my veg like every week. I'll spray it after they come in there, and it's just like a barrier that can stick to anything. And most people sprinkle it, but I use it in a spray. I got a tip from a buddy, and it works very, very well. Um, so but so there are positive to seeds and positive to clones, and it's just really, just like with the different methods of how you're going to pop them or take them, it's really what you are best at or what you want to do or what works best in your situation or area. Um, Gardeners have to be creative, not so much as much anymore, but back in the day, dude, gardeners had to be creative. You know, people venting out of their fireplaces constantly. They have those ash catches in a lot of the older houses, so I see a lot of people like vented into that. And the only way you can tell is if you look back in the fireplace, you see just like a ducting going up it.
Yeah.
But if you blow warm air up top of your fireplace, nobody's gonna smell it because that heat rises. So um, all kinds of stuff. So be creative. If anybody ever has any questions or anything, I'm not gonna say I've heard it all, but I've heard a lot of crazy stuff that worked and didn't work. So I'll say it a million more times, but we love questions, so holler at us.
We do. Love when people reach out. Some of my favorite part of the day.
Yeah, it's fun. It's just fun, honestly.
What about prices? Now, seed prices. I mean, they get you can get them cheap or you get them fucking expensive. And I've seen some expensive fucking seeds out there, like you know, expensive. So what about pricing?
So for seeds, there are prices everywhere, like you said, and there's tons of different qualities, right? So there are seeds where people and not even qualities in how good the plant is, how good the plant maybe usually is, but quality is as in how well what the breeder actually did, right? So the breeder, the crosser, the chucker, whatever you want to call it. So to me, if you want to call yourself a breeder, you have to take a plant with intention and create crosses with intention, and you have to base that off of genetic percents, off of dominant traits and recessive traits. And you say, okay, I want to make a lemon tasting plant that's purple. Okay, if you're taking, and then you take a velvet pie and you take a lemon hash plant, you search through 1,000 plants and you say, okay, this is the most purple one, this is the most lemon one, and you put that together, and then you go through that offspring and you're like, man, I don't quite have it, and you figure it out, and you get to your back crosses, or you get to your F2s, 3s, and 4s, you get to whatever you need to get to, and then you get a purple plant that tastes like lemons. You are breeding that. You are breeding with an intent, with an intention. You put work into that. You have multiple harvests and multiple, like a seed. I'm not gonna say it's really hard to make a seed because it's not, especially normal seeds. It's just like it happens in nature. Like a lot of people, it just happens accidentally. Like they pop seeds, and I accidentally got a male. Like shit's not hard to do.
Right.
But when you take the time to go through hundreds of seeds and go through multiple generations is different than somebody saying, "Oh, this famous cut over here that I got from my buddy for free, and then I popped these seeds over here and I took a male out without doing any testing or anything and I put it to that." I'm not hating on that. I fucking love that. I love some F1s with random shit in there that I can hunt through, and every plant's way different. And at the end, I'm like, man, I don't know what to do because this plant's gassy and this plant's fruity, and both of them ripped every like I love it. That's what I'm in the seed hunt for, is to find those wild out there F1s, initial crosses. But a huge difference there. So just so people can get a little bit of an idea, and I'm not saying everybody bangs this out, but my very first 2x4 tent that I ever crossed, I threw a male in with like 5 or 6 females, maybe actually it was like 7 or 8 females because I remember being pissed about how many I used, and I ended up having to stack them on the middle one, 2 middle ones. I had to stack on 4 other pots and stretch them out, and because they were cloth, and then so the top one drained into the other ones because I ended up not having enough space in there. Anyway, that's a different story. But I got 9,000 seeds. Most of them I gave away, and I sell some of them still because they're proved that there's 2 strains I really, really like. All of them, none of them really herm or anything. I haven't gotten any herms from any of them. I haven't heard of any herms from any of them. I've only, I haven't heard from 99% of the people who have them, but the people who tell me about them love them. But I gave most of them out. It was somebody else's brandy wine from Dungeons Vault, somebody else's plant, and it was a bunch of clones, other people's plants. So that's way different. I'm just taking other people's work or other people's vision or whatever it is and saying this is great, let's make that. So just recognize that that is different than purposeful breeding. So seeds can literally be for free. Like I give out, I don't give them out as much anymore. I'll give them to friends. I trade them a lot. I do have like packs available all the time. I test everything myself. I hunt everything myself. My last seed hunt, every single plant, I hunted myself, male and female, and then I hunted every single strain of that. That's what I just smoked with the sparkling wine. So so it's like and I'm not saying anything is better than anything else. I just have I want to know what I'm doing. Like, I want to know what each plant is, what it does taste like, and I want to be able to smoke its child and say, "Ooh, the mom's coming out in this way. Ooh, it's growing like the dad in this way, or the dad's sisters typically." So I seeds you can get for free, 25, 50 cents, up to literally I have paid for old seeds a couple $100 a seed, and then 5 out of 7 of them didn't pop. So I take them to an embryo rescue, which they aren't through any of that yet, but they told me they're practicing embryo rescue. They told me if I would, it was about $1,000 a seed to actually do, I believe. So it was either $1,000 a seed or maybe 1,000 for all of them, which was only 2 of them. I don't know if they even knew that, so hopefully I'm not drastically getting that wrong. But all in all, if I get one seed out of that, it's a $2,200 seed.
Jeez.
So it's like, it can be all over the place. Just know what you're getting. Don't let people, oh, I did this and this. Ask about it. Oh, what was the mom like? What was the dad like? Did you see any herming? Did you see any purples in there? What can I be looking for in this? So when you talk about the genetics breaking down, the phenos can be very similar. So when you have a pretty stable genetic, you can say, oh, this is going to throw off mainly 2 different plants. A very purple berry one that's going to be a little bit a little bit higher in THC, but not grow as heavy of a yield. And then a yellow fading light green one that's going to be a little bit better yield and a little bit lower THC, or whatever it is. You can say, this is typically what we see expressed together. But you can still find a wild one in there anywhere. There's always, but that's a breeder should be able to tell you that. Ask them if they've grown them themselves. If they just have testers growing for them, they're using just tester pictures, like that's probably a pretty clear indication that breeder is just taking other people's plants. Like they're not even growing out their own plants. A lot of breeders don't smoke weed. A lot of people in the industry now don't smoke weed. And I'm not, you know what, if you gotta stop smoking weed for your health and you love it still, whatever. But I'm just saying, like, how are you gonna let somebody's breeding plants and they don't smoke weed? how are they even going to do that work to say that's what they have to go off of somebody else's palate and off of somebody else's descriptions?
You gotta know what you're growing, man. You gotta know what you're smoking.
Yeah,
Don't
exactly.
don't you know
Yeah,
what you're growing is by smoking it, or eating it, or tincturing it, or something. If you can't smoke it, do something with it so you at least test out the high. Yes, I know all different ways of intake are different, but you still gotta try your product.
yeah. Oh yeah, you just gotta.
That only way
You
I
have
can
to.
stand by it if I
You have
know
to have.
it's first.
Yeah, you have to have an unbiased opinion. Like you are that, and you're still biased, but you still. If I come to you and I'm like, dude, this plant was really gassy and lemony, that might be something different to you than it does to me.
Yeah.
So, and we just talked about testers. Just to throw this out there real quick, because we're getting a little long for people, but don't. I've seen this fad where people are charging people to test seeds. Listen, guys, test real testing for somebody is more than just like growing some seeds. Like you should know percent germination, you should know percent male to female. You should know the weights on the plants. You should know really how those, like if you're really testing for somebody, to me, as a breed, as a crosser, I'm not going to say breeder, as somebody who's crossed plants, I want to know what kind of light you're running. I want to know how warm your room is. I want to know like everything
You want
because
to
that says
journal.
a lot.
You want you the way I look at it is if someone's giving you, and they shouldn't be charging you to test their run. They should actually be paying you. I'm just kidding, but
Well,
they should.
they should pay you in packs of seeds. That's how I've always gotten paid.
That I agree with 100%. They should You shouldn't have to pay to run. So you test for somebody. You're helping them better their genetics, better their work, better their maybe profitability if they get something that really comes out good, and you're helping them to be able to become a legit breeder, seed just so the journal part of it is you're helping somebody with their craft,
Yeah.
and it's not a bad thing. I'm not a good journaler. I mean, I journal my grows, but I don't write like full in depth. I write watered. This is what I put into it. This is what stage I'm in. This is the date I did this. This is where I did my trim, and this is when I started to grow. I do the basics of a journal. I don't write like big long sentences and paragraphs. But when you're growing for somebody, you're gonna have to journal, and that's part of the fun. If you like to write and you like to experiment, you like to, and that breeder is going to enjoy reading your notes, and what they asked you to keep is the whole benefit of the part. And then you get a bunch of seeds from that grow, man.
Yeah.
You never know. Maybe that you'll become a he might come, or she might come back to you, or that person might come back to you all the time to
Yep.
be to test out new strains for them, and that'd be pretty dope because they liked your opinion, and that's when you get the free stuff. That's the good.
It's
That's the good goods.
it's fun to get through there too because their lineage progresses. So they pick a male from something you already tested when you follow a breeder. So like I did the titty sprinkle line, pretty much the whole line for Secret Society, and now he's on the sprinkles line. And the first part of it I didn't get to, but the second part I did, and I can taste that titty sprinkles influence in every. I mean, first off, I haven't tasted any of them yet, but I can smell it in there. Every single fucking one of them, I can smell
Nice.
it. And so I just loved. It was fun for me to go through and be like, oh my gosh, the titty sprinkles from 2.5 years ago, or whatever, a year and a half, whenever I can't remember when I ran, like a few years ago now. Smelled it in there, was awesome. But yeah, man, it's. I love seeds. Just I would say a good price to pay for seeds would be about $50 a pack. If they're getting above that, make sure they're answering your questions. Make sure you're going after something specific. There is fantastic genetics everywhere, and there's a lot of people that just copy shit and throw shit in. But a big thing with those testers too is that a good breeder needs to know how their gear runs in different situations. You run your room LED 1500 parts per million CO2 with cocoa and 3 times a day watering, and somebody else is running HPS peat moss based
You're getting
organic,
totally different grows on
way
that.
different.
Holy shit.
So they might be seeing stuff that you can't tell people that is representing your weed or your strains because you don't see it in your setup. You're breeding for what looks great and what reacts great to your setup, not what looks and reacts great to everybody's setup. And a lot of times these breeders out there are great gardeners, so their setup is dialed in. And so if they're not purposely stressing these plants to say, hey, how is this going to react when it gets really warm? How is this going to react when it gets really windy? They might be progressing part of their lineage where when it starts to get a little bit too much wind, it immediately herms. And they don't even realize it because they don't have too much wind anywhere.
Wow.
They might be somewhere a little underwatered, it herms. And so then all of a sudden you get this line out there, and for fuck, maybe you pick a male from that line because you don't know that's expressed. Your entire line now has a chance of herming as soon as a fan hits it, you know. And so um, the breeders are important part of that. But somebody making those strains, getting you when you go to get those seeds, just ask. Don't feel bad to ask them questions. I love answering questions about my seeds. I don't even like. I'm not a big time quote unquote breeder. I don't, like I pay my taxes and shit, but I'm not like out there with like a ID number on my shit and stuff, like I still have that first line left that I told you I got 9,000 seeds out of that. That was 4 years ago. Like I still have some of that shit left. So, um,
Cool. Let's smoke
yeah, yeah,
it.
we can definitely pop. I got some of those lemon Louis for sure. I kept a couple hundred of each of them back for myself. Um,
That's that fucking strain, man.
that lemon hash plant mom was a fire. Was super nice.
I
I've hunted
love.
that myself from Bodai.
I'm high, dude. I grew that strain what 2 years ago. Yeah,
Yep.
man, and like I said, I still got a full jar left of the big toppers, man. I love that fucking strain, man. I talk about that shit. Because I don't have that much left. And I don't know when I'm gonna grow the next line, grow it next again. It's special, comes out at special occasions now because I'm running.
Christmas and Easter.
And it was a
Yeah.
very proud moment. I bought you a fucking a heady, dude. When I came to see you, I
Yeah, I
bought
remember that. That was good.
you that fat, just Christmas montage of a nug. I mean, that was beautiful. And I for some reason, man, that grow will always stick in my head because it was my first true. I mean, my first true grow that I enjoyed the my first grow sucked. I mean, I got some weed, I smoked it, it was good. Lemon berry and berry white, great stuff. I still got some seeds from that too. Now I know what I can't wait to grow. But that was my first where I got nugs, dude. That were just like
Yeah.
monsters for me. And I was like, this is what growing's all about. This is
Yeah.
fucking great. Wow. Earl shit
That's
is the
what I want to
shit.
do.
Yeah, So yeah, dude, I love it, man. I love that Louis. So what else we got to do? What's the difference between like hunting genetics and pollen chunk and genetics and shit? Like I tried to do one time and I failed
Sure.
miserably. I saved that pollen food still in my freezer. I gotta come and see you soon and bring it to
I
you.
hope
But
it's viable, bro. I'll throw it on whatever. I got some autoflower pollen down the other day that I'm really geeked to work with because this thing just stacked male flowers. Just stacked them. And these autoflowers I've been messing with are just so nice. I can't believe how fast they grew, how good they smell, and how big they are. Like I'm running them. I started them when I started flowering in my room. Ran my room 63 days or something like that, and they're gonna run 2 days, 2 weeks longer. I hope. I'm gonna try to run them about 70 to 80 days. They're gonna be done from seed. Didn't transplant them once. Didn't do effing anything, bro.
nice.
Trimmed them up every now and again. Wild.
Like you've told me, we've talked. You said of autos have gotten so much better over the years too. So the genetics for autos have
That's
gotten
how
better.
just how THC did, just how CBD is gonna do. CBD used to be 5-6%. Now we're getting in the 20s. Just how CBG is eventually gonna be like that. All the CBs, THs, all the deltas. We're gonna be able to breed for all those soon once people
Yeah, I
start
can't
doing the
wait
work.
because I don't want synthetic. I want in the plant. And I've said this before on the show. I want all the cannabinoids. And you and I had this talk too. The first time I came to your place, I said I want someone to be able to grow. Except all if you can get a plant that has like a good amount of the cannabinoids in there,
Yeah,
and you got something that nobody else has. Like I mean, I know CBG is the early stage, and then you got it goes. It all depends, but there's got to be a way to grow where you get 4 or 5 cannabinoids in one because
yeah,
there's over 100 of them. So I mean, if you can get where you can get like 4 or 5 and get all the good goods from that, oh god, Man,
Bet
that's
you we can get them up there in some percents. Get like 5% of all of them or something, and then get a
half.
10% THC on top, and like, oh my goodness.
Oh man, it's gonna be so good. Do we got any shout outs to anybody? Did anybody send us any questions or anything before we head out?
Yeah. Man, I'm ill prepared for that now.
That's
But
all
we
right.
did. Yeah. We got shout out. I think Tez. You were talking about him earlier.
No, our
Asked a
guy Ted
question.
from Australia.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I'm sorry. I don't want to go through. I think I can't remember what he asked or what.
He actually just started a tent, his first tent grow. Me and him have been bullshitting here and there. He got his
Yeah.
first tent grow, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So got a few in
Good.
the hopper there, and he does his outside stuff too. So, but I'm so excited to see him. He's been sending me pictures. I got him the first time on the first Friday, his first picture for the Show Your Grow Friday. Don't forget about that, everybody, man. Send us your pics, man. Your grow. We love to put them out there for you. So, but hey, we'll get the question next
Yeah.
time. Sorry about that, everybody, but we will
Sorry,
definitely
Tez.
questions answered, Tez, and if not, just he'll Big Earl will DM you anyway. So one way or
I'll
the
look
other.
through it.
So, but everybody out there, man, we got some next episode 4. We're gonna be talking about mediums and watering. Watering, man, is the whoo. That is a fickle thing to learn. And some people are like, "What? Watering your plants?" Yes, watering your
Right.
plants is a fucking pain in the. It could be the best experience or the worst experience. Because
Sure.
if you don't do it right, or you do it wrong, or you do it some ways that you this is a good episode. So stay tuned for watering your cannabis, man. It's going to be a good one. Big Earl, you got anything else to say?
No, man, I appreciate it. I had a great chat. I loved it. Hope everybody learned a little bit about starting their own plants and can use some of that.
Learn to clone. Get
Yeah.
some good seeds. Get your grow going. Reach out to us anytime you want. Everybody out in the world, we love you, man. Thanks for listening to the Grow Hour with Big Earl and Mr. Weedman. We appreciate you. Smoke big fat doinks while you're listening to the show, everybody. We love you all out there in the world. Don't forget what, Big Earl?
Or CalMag, guys. Don't forget it.
Don't forget the cow, everybody.